Welcome to the Faith Secure Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Brown, and today I have the privilege of having on Dr. Toussaint Williams, the Vice President and Executive Secretary for the South Central Conference of Seventh-day Adventists. He is also a former associate pastor and adjunct professor and someone deeply committed to developing leaders. Before we go any further, Dr. Toussaint Williams, I want to thank you again for making time in your busy schedule to be with us today. I truly appreciate your flexibility.
And Mike, thank you so much for having me on. I have been so excited to see your journey having started, when we started the journey of the idea of creating safe environments for houses of worship and just to see you carry this on. I'm really excited today to pour into your listeners and just continue the conversation of what it means to make sure our houses of worship are secure.
I really appreciate it. No problem. One statement from Dr. Toussaint's LinkedIn profile immediately caught my attention. He says, helping the leaders behind the leaders creates first place outcomes. Today, we're going to explore exactly what that means and why leadership development is one of the greatest investments that churches can make. Doc, you ready to dive right in?
Man, let's do it. I'm excited. Let's make it happen.
Okay, we're going to start with leadership philosophy. So, Dr. Williams, again, in your LinkedIn profile, you say helping leaders behind the leaders creates first place outcomes. What exactly does that statement mean to you, and what inspired that philosophy?
Well, Mike, my journey in leadership has been a number of things. Many of them, I've been an associate or an assistant, and now as a vice president. And I found myself kind of in the place where I was about to be or to selected for that first seat, whether it be a pastoral role or a presidential role, and I didn't get it. And I was frustrated, I was angry, got
Mm-hmm.
depressed, and I was just really had to wrestle with the idea of um, what does this look like? And God took me through this journey and He said, what if I didn't call you to be first? But what if I called you to make
Yes.
first place outcomes from where you're sitting right now? And that journey realized, and God was like, two is in your first name, Toussaint, and I'm the second born child.
I love it.
And so it was, I really kind of embraced like, what if this thing is what God called me for? And then there were so many other people as I began to talk and to share that didn't have a proper training of what it means to serve in that second seat. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why I created the idea of serving second, because it's an opportunity to serve, an opportunity to grow and strengthen the individuals that you work with. And that's where I got the idea from. Because at the end of the day, the most influential person in an organization isn't always the person in front of the camera or the person that has the
That's true.
title. Sometimes it's people behind the scenes that person goes to ask questions, to kind of get some wisdom. And that's where I realized how important that second seat is.
Oh, yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And Doc, you've had a unique leadership journey. Again, you've served as a pastor, professor, and now the vice president and executive secretary. I want you to speak to how those three experiences shaped your philosophy of leadership.
Well, I really didn't get it at the time when I started. I have a very unique journey. I have an MBA. I have an MBA in finance. I have a MDiv in for pastoral leadership, and then
Right.
a PhD in education. And so my years of experiences, I've taught as a pastor. I was a professor, and now as a vice president of an organization. I felt like, man, I'm literally all over the place. But
Right.
in this season of reflection, I realized that God has kind of placed certain lessons in every season. So as a pastor, I learned about the idea of really loving people and getting that
Yes.
really kind of connecting with folks. And I think that was really special. And then as a professor, I realized the importance of teaching people in a systematic way and understanding this importance of developing people. And now, as an executive secretary, it's now more about building systems where people can thrive. And so
Right.
each one of those systems, each one of those areas and those lessons are really helping me um, create an environment where people can grow, where people can be loved, where they can learn. And most
Mhm.
importantly, they have those systems where they can thrive. And that's really important because I learned that great leaders develop people, they love people, and then they build people. And
Yes.
that's the really kind of the focus I'm working on when I come to serving second. And so, when looking at your podcast, to be able to say, hey, listen, there is a physical area of safety, but there's also what we identify as psychological safety and emotional safety, where people can
Right.
grow and learn and really develop as the people God has called us to be.
Outstanding. Outstanding. I, and I want to pivot a little bit, Doc,
Yeah.
and talk about healthy churches.
Hmm.
Okay. As the vice president, executive secretary, you have the opportunity to observe what, I mean, many different churches and pastors.
Hmm.
What characteristics consistently distinguish healthy churches from churches that may be experiencing a struggle?
Well, Mike, in my current position, we have churches in Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and the northwest part of Tennessee, Kentucky, and then the northwest part of Florida. And so we have churches in 5 different states. And one of the things initially, the idea is you think, or I thought a healthy church was the amount of people that are there, the amount of people that are really
Right.
pouring into the service. And that's not really the growth or the signal of a healthy church. A healthy church is where people are carrying the weight with each other, that the pastor
Mm,
is not the main leader. He doesn't carry everything alone, but he delegates, he creates those systems where people can thrive. And I think that's the ministry that Jesus kind of created when he created disciples, and the disciples started with growing the church, that no one person can do it alone. And as you make it an environment where the pastor may be providing the vision, but he's empowering other leaders, or he's allowing people to grow and develop in their areas of giftedness, that's where churches thrive. So you don't have to have a million people in your congregation to say
right.
this is a thriving church. But when you have people that are growing, when you have cross generational individuals, groups of individuals that are able to pour into one another, that's a real signal of a thriving church.
And and Doc, just like you said, most people look at a healthy church or growth strictly by the numbers.
Hmm.
And I see where you're saying it's more quality as opposed to just quantity. So I get it. I get it.
Absolutely. In fact, this week I'm going to Mississippi, and some of those smaller churches, Tunica, Mississippi, one of the smaller churches where you don't have the thousands of people that are there, but you have individuals that are committed to the Lord, that are making sure
Yes.
that they're pouring into the next generation, that are taking care of their communities, doing what they can to make a difference, that they are growing, that their individuals are growing and shape and being shaped. And I think that's really important. It's not focusing on numbers, but focusing on how many people can you disciple and make an impact in their lives for this life and the next to come.
Yes. I thank you for unpacking that. I'm going to swing back to what you were speaking of previously about leading behind the scenes. Now, many people think that leadership, as you mentioned, is about being out front.
Hmm.
You built a career helping leaders succeed. Why is leadership behind the scenes so important?
Mike, it started in my journey. I played basketball. Well, I used to before I got old. And I
Yeah.
was I was I was watching The Last Dance, and that was the
Mhm.
story of Michael Jordan, Scotty, the
Yes.
Bulls. They were going through that process, and after I was watching it, right around the time it came out, Scottie Pippen won a number of interviews, and he was frustrated because he felt
Yeah.
like he didn't get the same shine that Mike got,
Right. Right.
and that got me thinking. It's like, how do you live as a Scotty in a Michael Jordan world? The
Mm.
idea that the person that's in front, the person that's leading, is the one that's going to get the main focus of attention. And of course, Michael and Scotty were two different players, but one
Right.
thing I learned, Mike, was that only Michael and Scotty have 6 championship rings. Like, of all the teammates they played with, that 6 championship run, only two people have the same amount of championships. And I was like, wait a second. So when I began to write and understand this idea of what happens behind the scenes, like, Michael was successful because Scotty was successful in his role.
That's right.
And what I'm
That's right.
realizing is that, man, before MJ came on the scene, he couldn't get past the Lakers. He couldn't get
Nope.
past he couldn't get past the
The
Detroit
Celtics.
Pistons, the Celtics, like all. And he had to create a system, and there had to be people that came alongside of him to help him grow. And taking the glasses off of the idea that, wait a second, if I'm not MJ, I'm nothing. No, wait a second. I
Ah.
was able to embrace that. And so one of the things I'm learning in this, answering your question, leading behind the scenes, is most victories happen before you step on the court.
Mm.
When you're
Wow.
able to build individuals and know your role, and as an individual to be able to go out there, and listen, MJ, you score, I'm gonna guard the best defender. They're best. I'm gonna be the best defender on our
Mhm.
team to guard their best player. And what it does, it allows people to be in their genius zones. And one of the things I'm learning is that when you're able to really help and lead behind the scenes, there's usually only one mic for a soloist. There's only, one spotlight for the person that's in charge. But there are a number of people that are part of the journey that makes success happen. And I think that's where we have to really embrace and
Yeah.
unlock that journey to help people who aren't in the forefront to say, hey, listen, you have a major role. God has given you. In fact, it goes back to the text, whatever your hands find to do it with all your might. And being
Hmm.
able to
Yes.
build on that and lead where your feet are makes all the difference in the world.
Wow. And that's, that actually coming me, of course, coming from the security and
Absolutely.
world. I always tell people that everybody has a role to play in the overall security posture of the church. Everybody has a role to play. So I'm glad that you spoke to that issue of, your role is important. It may not get as much notoriety, but it helps the overall mission of winning. So yes. So now I want to talk to you about two of my favorite topics is stewardship and preparedness. Okay, one of the themes at Faith Secure is that preparedness begins with leadership.
Mm.
So how do you define leadership stewardship, and why is it so important for today's church?
I love the idea of leadership stewardship. Is the idea, first of all, that a steward is somebody who manages things that is not
Mm-hmm.
theirs. And there
Right.
is an understanding that in this context, I don't own what God has given me, but I
Wow.
have the ability or the responsibility to manage it well. And that's
Mm.
what's most important in understanding that. And so that includes resources, that includes systems, that includes influence and opportunities. That all of those things impact what God has given me. And so when you're talking about the level of preparedness, like the idea of having Mike Brown in a church as our security officer, like we don't want to see you. Like we know if we see you, if we see you, there's something major going
There's a
on. There's
problem.
something bad. Yes. But the other side of it is that we want to make sure if something goes down, you know what's to happen. And everybody knows how to be prepared in those moments. And so
Right.
that's why this is so important. You have to prepare for the unexpected. And you don't know what may happen, what the nefarious ideas or people or systems that are out there. And we've got to
Mhm.
make sure we're preparing for that because we can't assume that everything's going to go well, that all things are going to right. But you have to
That's
have
right.
some type of backup plan where we can prepare because the Bible talks, make sure that we're supposed to be wise as serpents, as harmless as doves. But we have a preparedness plan to understand for our finances, for our governance, for succession, but most importantly, our safety of our congregations so that people can prepare today, enjoy today, but also live, think, and plan for tomorrow.
Yes, yes. And in that vein, churches and houses of worship face increasing complexity. And I want to talk to you about leading through complexity.
Yeah.
So, how can pastors remain focused on ministry while also leading organizations that must think about preparedness, governance, organizational health, and risk management? How can pastors remain focused on ministry with all these other hats and areas that they have to consider?
I think, first of all, understanding that complexity. Pastoring nowadays is more than just preaching a sermon. It's more
Yes.
than just visiting. There are a number of complexities. There's financial areas that you got to deal with. There's also governance that you have to make sure that's taken care of, the insurance, the business side of it. And there's so many
Yes.
different complexities that happen when it comes to leading a congregation. But understanding those complexities and also understanding that you can't do it by yourself. That you can
Right.
try, but you have to understand, okay, what are two or three areas that I can do and I can do well? And then those areas where I can't, I have to be willing to find capable, dependable people that I can entrust to lead in
Yes.
their areas of giftedness, to bring them on and give them the reins to say, hey, listen, I'm going to create some clear boundaries, some clear expectations, some clear accountability areas, and we're going to grow this thing together. And I really think that when you have a pastor, when you have a leader that's able to say, this is not my lane, I need you to handle this. This is
Right.
not an
Right.
area of strength that I can manage and manage well. Even if I can do it, if I put more of my energy on this, I'm lacking in other areas. And what it
Absolutely.
also does, I enjoy, is in this complexity, it allows us to expand the body of Christ.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the things that I really think as a healthy pastor that understands because it's so complex, I need more people to be a part of this. And I'm going to be praying that God sends people that can be a part of the strategic plan so that we can grow together. And that's what I really think a healthy church is. A pastor that sees his gifts and his limitations, but also brings people along to help
Yes.
him in his blind spots to make sure that happens, to shepherd people in the way that God has called them to.
And you know, and that you just defined a great leader. So, yes, absolutely. So now I want to talk about developing future leaders on
Yeah.
that same vein. You spent years teaching at Oakwood University. What's one lesson that you hope every future pastor learns before entering the ministry?
One lesson that you're not Superman.
Ah,
You, you know,
yes.
and I think the idea is you're going in that God has called. I've accepted the fact God has called me. He's called me to lead a congregation. But one of the misnomers is that you can do everything. It's so crazy. Just
Mm,
yesterday, I was going through one of my journals, and there was moments where in ministry I was literally depressed. I was because I felt the weight of trying to do everything. And even though it's 10, 15 years ago, I realized, wait a second, the reason why that weight isn't on me as much now is because I recognize these things I do well. This is an area of giftedness that I have. And I think that's honestly, Mike, if I'm really honest with you, um, it's humbling because you think you can do it. And there are moments where you
yeah,
can, but you can't do it well for a sustained period of time.
there you go. I was going to ask, it's not sustainable. Yes.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. And I think for future leaders, and I think this is now one of the blessings that I really have when it comes to investing in leaders, like you have to have a mentor and you have to be mentored.
Mm,
And so you have to be able to pour into people that are coming along beside you. And some people may be saying, hey, well, listen, I've only been in ministry for a short amount of time. Well, I learned that a fifth grader can teach a first grader. So you
right,
don't have to have everything together to be a full-blown
right.
professor of teaching, but you got to be willing to, hey, I can see some things and have areas of growth, but then also you got to be humble enough to be able to receive from somebody who's gone through and it seems has some of the battle scars, so you don't have to actually go through it. And I think that's what happens when it comes to future leaders. And one more thing, if I can add,
Oh, by all
I would,
means.
man, I would pour into a pastor and let them know that sermons don't matter as much as you think they do. What really matters
Mm,
is how you pour into people.
yes.
Like some of us
Yeah.
know great orators, the people that are great speakers, but as soon as that mic is over, as soon as the benediction happens, they're jerks or they don't know how to communicate with people. Or, and the reality is we celebrate giftedness, but being able, the ability to be able to pour into somebody makes more of a difference outside of the sermonic experience that
Right.
will carry them throughout the
Absolutely.
rest of the week. And so I think that's
Absolutely.
really, really important when it comes to investing in future leaders. Number one, your ministry matters, but how you treat pastoral ministry when it comes in the pulpit matters, but how you treat people outside of the pulpit matters even more.
Oh, wow. And I'm gonna tell you, Doc, I want to go into far as like, okay, we're talking about future leaders, but now I want to talk about coaching leaders. I want to get more
Yeah.
into your coaching style here. How do you coach pastors through difficult leadership seasons?
First of all, understanding you said that seasons don't last forever.
Hmm.
There's
Okay.
no place in the world, even in Alaska, where it snows all the time. In
Right.
England, it doesn't rain every day. But you have
Right.
to prepare for those moments and prepare for those seasons. And one thing, a friend of mine, Eric Thomas, when I was actually
Hmm.
again going back to this, because, and I guess let me say this: I'm in a season now where I'm doing a lot of reflection, and what was happening in
Right.
my moments of ministry. I would journal and I would write down these are things that are happening. I write down things I was having difficult time with, and what happens is being able to go back some years later and say, man, I learned this lesson, or I'm still being challenged with this area. It allows me to see where I am in those moments of growth. And so understanding that seasons don't last forever, but you got to make sure you understand and prepare for these seasons because seasons are also cyclical. And
Yeah,
so you
that's
got to
true.
make sure that summer's going to happen, May
Hmm.
to
Yes.
August is going to happen. It's
Yes.
going to fall is going to happen, and what happens, the challenging with those seasons, if you're not prepared for them, you'll miss out. But the other thing is true too. There are people that make a lot of money in difficult seasons. You got folks who snow resorts when it snows, people are making money. When you know what I'm saying? There's always people who enjoy various areas of different seasons, and so I think it's important that as you're navigating life, that the difficult seasons don't mean you're a bad leader. It just means it's a
Right.
difficult season. You got to focus on what you can control, clarifying your mission, and going back to who God has called me to be, and rest in that. Understanding
Mm.
that even Jesus, the Bible says right after he was baptized, the Bible says the Holy Spirit took him to the wilderness to be tempted.
That's right. That's right.
you know, and so that lets us know that even Jesus himself had to go through some difficult moments, and every day of his life was
Absolutely.
spiritual warfare. And so, if I can just say this, understand ministry is spiritual warfare. Like every
Mm.
day that you wake up, the enemy is trying to throw you off your game. And you got to stay rooted and grounded in the word. You got to be committed to who God has called you to be. And when you pour into other people, it allows God to have the trust in you to steward what God has given you. And then God always rewards those who trust in him.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it. I love it. Okay, we're gonna give the viewers and the listeners a little hope. Okay, so
Yeah,
we're gonna talk
yeah.
about some hope for the future. When you think about the future of the church, what gives you hope?
What One of the things that really encourages me is when
Hmm.
people are taught or have the experience to do something that they didn't think possible. And I'm
Mm.
really learning this with my boys. They're 21 and 17 now. Both of them about to go into college, and it's crazy
Wow.
because they do things a little bit differently than I do.
Okay.
But my the thing that I really appreciate the hope is that because they see things differently, they have different expectations. And I think my role now is to make sure that they see what's possible and let
Mm.
them thrive. And I think
Okay.
that's what's so important about pouring into the next generation and not just making life about yourself. When you're able to make an impact for the people or the generations that are coming up behind you, that's what really gives me hope. To know that there are people that are gifted, that are creative, that don't necessarily see life the way that I do. But when they're committed to God, I trust that God gives them the creativity to lead in their era and their generation that may be different than mine, but I trust that, man, God is going to see them through the same way he saw my crazy self through, and my parents and their parents. And that's what really gives me hope, to meet young pastors that are creative, to meet people that are in ministry that are excited about life and that can use these AI tools and all these different things
Yes,
and
yes.
really make a difference. And I think that's what really kind of pushes me and gets me up in the morning every day, to see how I can support this next generation doing the mission that God has called them to do.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'm going to ask you this. If every pastor that's listening today remembered just one sentence from this conversation and things that you shared today, what would you want it to be?
If you're listening to this, I want you to know that where you are matters. Not your
Mhm.
title, not your position, not a new church, not a larger congregation, that God can grow you right where you are. So I want to challenge those who are listening today is to grow where your feet are, not where you want to be. And it's good to be thinking in the future, but God, how can I maximize this moment? Because somebody today,
Mm.
somebody this weekend needs to hear what you're going through at this moment. So I want you to steward what you have in your hands right now today and watch how God blows you up. Watch how God expands your ministry. Watch how God uses you because you've been faithful in the few things. The Bible says he'll make you ruler over many things.
Wow. Wow. I love it. I love it. Doc, I got to ask you a bonus question.
Man, I'm here
Yes.
for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna take full advantage while I have you on here. Okay. Now, of course, just from the conversation that we've had, you spent your career investing in leaders. I'm curious, who invested in you and what did they teach you that still shapes you today?
I would say my father was really impactful.
Mm,
He didn't have a PhD.
okay.
He got through high school. I mean, got through college, but he wasn't a person he wasn't a pastor, but he was just a genuinely good person, like faithful, reliable, a man of his word.
Mm,
Wasn't always perfect, but he admitted that. And I think that made a huge difference in my life, that you don't have to have all these folks that are, with big titles. You can just be a genuine person. And to see how God
mm,
has honored
I
his
love it.
faithfulness to my mother, to our boy, my brothers, his boys. And that always kind of made me the man that I wanted to be. And as a result of trying to be like him, I felt like God really opened doors so I can do some things and have other experience that he hasn't. But when I talk to him, he's like just as excited for me as I am for myself, if not more, because he's seen, listen, I remind him, hey, listen, I appreciate what you poured into me. And that gives all the difference in the world. And so I would just, for me, and answering your question, I really think my dad, and there have been some other people that have poured in along the way, Pastor
Right,
Birdie,
right.
Pucky Ford, and the ones I'm working with now. But really, that anchor was, hey, listen, it's not about titles. It's just about being faithful to what God has called you to be. And I
That's
got that
right.
from my dad.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Yeah.
Now, Doc, I'm gonna get you out of here, and I'm gonna do what we do on occasion is the lightning round.
All right.
Okay. So I'm just gonna say a word, and you can tell me the word that triggers for you, or just short answer responses. Okay.
Yes,
You
sir.
ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. Leadership.
Responsibility,
Integrity.
consistency,
Okay. Something you've mentioned several times while we're talking, humility.
challenging,
Yes, it is. Lord, yes, it is. Preparation.
intentional,
Okay. Service.
essential,
Yes. Hope.
regularly,
I love it. Let's two more. Faith.
rewards,
Yes. Legacy.
3 words, the real blessing.
Yes. Thank you for participating in the lightning round. That was pretty good. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Dr. Williams, I want to thank you for joining me today. Your leadership perspective reminds us that healthy churches, they don't happen by accident. They are led intentionally by men and women committed to serving others with wisdom, humility, as you mentioned, and excellence. I want to thank you for sharing your experience and for investing in the leaders who in turn invest in God's people. You did an outstanding job today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this experience.
No problem. Hey, if I just want to ask this last question. How can the viewers learn more about the South Central Conference and the important work taking place throughout your conference?
Man, we'd love to allow them to be a part of our journey. You can follow us at iamsouthcentral.org, iamsouthcentral.org, or you can follow us on Facebook. Just look up South Central Conference, and that's where we are. We serve individuals in Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, and the northwest part of Florida.
Yes, thank you for that. Then just hang out 1 second while I close. And to the viewers, thank you for joining us on this podcast today. If you found the information that Dr. Williams shared or the information that was shared on any other prior episode, be sure to like and share. And Doc, I just want to thank you again. All right.
Mike, thank
And
you.
I want to remind the viewers, remember to be watchful, prayerful, and prepared. God bless.